The crimson moonlight of Arcanus IV cast long shadows across the ruins of Relar, its eerie glow painting the ancient walls in shades of blood and rust. Wind whistled through the abandoned fortress, carrying the fine red sand that seemed to cover everything on this forsaken planet. In the distance, the silhouette of the Astra's Hope stood vigilant against the clear, cloudless sky that had never known rain. Mirana. Mira. Thorn adjusted her atmospheric sensor, brushing a strand of silver-white hair from her face. At 27, she had already seen more of the Nine-Realm universe than most would in a lifetime. Her slightly blue-tinged skin glistened under the red moonlight, and her platinum eye, capable of piercing the darkest night, scanned the horizon with practiced precision. "Anything unusual?" Captain Elias Rourke's deep voice broke the silence as he approached, his sturdy frame casting a long shadow. At 32, the battle-hardened spacer carried himself with the confidence of a man who had survived the border wars. The scar running from his left jawbone down to his right collarbone told stories he rarely shared. His dark brown eyes, ever watchful, kept returning to the eastern horizon. "Nothing yet," Mira replied, her voice carrying the subtle musical lilt characteristic of her Lunane heritage, the elegant blend of human and Lana bloodlines. "But there's something off about the air currents tonight. The readings are inconsistent with our previous surveys." Eli nodded, his beard-stubbled face impossible to read. "I don't like it. We should collect what we need and get back to the ship before dawn." He checked his plasma rifle with practiced efficiency, a habit from his mercenary days that he'd never abandoned. Always the optimist. Mira smiled faintly, but her fingers instinctively reached for the Lana earring her mother had left here, a protective talisman against dark magic. An heirloom she'd come to rely on more than she cared to admit. They had been mapping the wastelands of Arcanus IV for weeks now, staying one step ahead of the resource extraction companies that would inevitably strip the planet bare. As a survey team, their mission was to document whatever remained of the indigenous ecosystem before corporate interests reduced it to another lifeless mining operation. But tonight, something was different. The air felt charged, dangerous. "The sensors are picking up strange energy fluctuations from the east," Mira said, her brow furrowing as she studied her readings. "Right where the Shadow Cult supposedly has their hidden base." Eli's hand tightened on his weapon. "The Arcane Fellowship. Call them by their proper name, they've earned that much fear." His voice hardened. The Arcane Fellowship had been expanding their influence across the Outer Rim for years, their fanatical worship of cosmic beings justifying increasingly violent purifications of those they deemed unworthy. Before Mira could respond, the ship's sensors emitted a high-pitched warning. A dark shape shot across the sky, momentarily blotting out the stars. Both of them tensed, memories of their last unexpected encounter with the Fellowship's forces still fresh in their minds. "Inside," Eli commanded, pulling Mira toward the ruined fortress walls. "Now." They barely made it to cover when the first plasma bolt struck the ground where they had been standing, sending a shower of red sand into the air. Eli cursed under his breath, unslinging his rifle in one fluid motion. Mira pressed her back against the ancient wall, drawing her sidearm as her heart hammered in her chest. "So much for a routine survey," she whispered, the earring suddenly heavy against her neck. The night erupted in chaos as dozens of black-robed figures materialized from the darkness, surrounding the fortress. Their violet plasma blades hummed with deadly energy, illuminating pale faces contorted with zealous determination. One figure stepped forward, his face an unnatural obsidian mask of ritual scarification, pointing an accusatory finger toward the ruins. "Where is she? Heretic!" he bellowed, his voice carrying across the desert. "Surrender the half-breed to the Holy Temple." Mira felt tears welling in her eyes as ancient words echoed in her memory. "Those who erase divinity shall be punished." The Fellowship had been hunting Lana-human hybrids for generations, considering them an abomination against their cosmic gods. She was both their perfect target and their greatest fear. Eli gave her a quick hand signal, directing her toward a half-collapsed archway that led to the underground chambers of the fortress. "Go," he mouthed silently. "I'll find you." As Mira slipped away into the shadows, Eli stepped out, rifle raised, to face the encroaching zealots. In the distance, he activated the emergency beacon on his wrist communicator, sending one critical message to his crew. At any cost, protect Mira. The darkness of the ancient tunnels swallowed Mira as she descended, the sounds of battle fading above her. Her Lana heritage gave her eyes that could pierce the gloom, revealing forgotten corridors carved with symbols of a civilization long extinct. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, echoing through the labyrinthine passages. She activated her comlink, attempting to reach Eli. "Eli, can you hear me? I'm in the lower tunnels. There should be an exit that leads to the eastern ridge." Static crackled. Then a fragment of his voice broke through. "Eli is trying to retreat." The signal died. Fear clutched at her heart as she pressed deeper into the darkness. The tunnels grew narrower, the air thick with the scent of minerals and decay. Then, a movement in the shadows ahead made her freeze. She raised her weapon, finger tensing on the trigger. "Hold your fire. Lunane," came a soft, gravelly voice. "I'm not here to harm you." From the darkness emerged a figure unlike any she had seen before, part Lana, part Furlans, with the distinctive partial muzzle and fur markings of the latter species. His eyes gleamed with an inner light that reminded her of her mother's. "My name is Kale," he said, keeping his hands visible. "I'm with the wandering Lana community. We've been tracking the Fellowship's movements, hoping to prevent another massacre." He gestured to the pendant, hanging from his neck, a symbol Mira recognized from her childhood, the mark of the Lana resistance. "How did you find me?" she asked, keeping her weapon steady. "The same way they did," Kyle replied grimly. "Your ship's energy signature. But we need to move. They're already in the tunnels." As if summoned by his words, shouts echoed from the corridor behind them, accompanied by the violet glow of plasma blades. Kale grabbed her arm, pulling her deeper into the maze of tunnels, just as zealots rounded the corner. "This way," he hissed, leading her through a narrow crevice barely visible in the wall. "There's an ancient water system beneath the fortress. It will lead us to safety." Above ground, Eli was engaged in a deadly dance with the Fellowship warriors. His plasma rifle hummed with each discharge, superheated energy cutting through the night air. He used the ruined walls for cover, drawing the zealots away from Mira's escape route, but they were relentless in their pursuit. A plasma blade nearly took his head off as he ducked behind a fallen column. The zealot wielding it snarled, fanatic devotion burning in his eyes. "The half-breed cannot escape judgment. The Vialara demands purification." Eli responded with a blast that sent the man flying backward, his robes smoldering. "You talk too much," he muttered, checking his weapon's charge. It was dropping too quickly. He couldn't hold them off forever. As 3 more zealots converged on his position, a high-energy blast from somewhere in the darkness dropped one of them instantly. The others whirled, searching for the source as another shot took down a second attacker. From her sniper position on a collapsed tower, Sarah watched through her scope as Eli seized the opportunity to eliminate the third zealot. Her Lana human features remained impassive as she lined up another shot, her specialized rifle barely making a sound as it discharged deadly energy bolts. Eli spotted her silhouette against the crimson moon and gave a curt nod of thanks. He recognized her immediately, one of Kale's fighters. If she was here, it meant the wandering Lana community had come in force. Perhaps they weren't as outnumbered as he'd feared. Using his tactical communicator, he sent an encrypted message on a frequency he knew Kale monitored. "The girl is in the tunnels. Where's your extraction point?" In the depths below, Mira and Kale waded through ankle-deep water. The ancient drainage system, a maze of partially collapsed tunnels and unexpected drops. The salty water stung any exposed cuts, and strange luminescent creatures scuttled away from their path. The Fellowship, the Arcane Fellowship. Mira corrected herself. Why are they so determined to find me specifically? There must be other Lunanes in this sector. Kale's expression darkened as they paused at an intersection of tunnels. It's not just that you're Lunane. It's who your grandparents were. He checked both passages before continuing. The Fellowship worships an entity they call Violara, a cosmic being that once nearly destroyed the ancient Lana kingdom. Your maternal grandparents were pure Lana, leaders of one of the few resistance orders. They sacrificed themselves so your human mother could escape with their knowledge. Mira felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. My mother never told me. She was protecting you, Kale said gently. But the Lana mark you carry, he nodded toward her earring, is more than a trinket. It's a connection to the old magic, the ability to resist Violara's dark influence. To the Fellowship, you're both blasphemy and threat. Their conversation was cut short by the distant echo of zealots entering the tunnel system. Kale motioned toward a dark passage that sloped downward. This leads to an underground lake. The mineral content disrupts energy signals. They won't be able to track us there. As they descended, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. A stillness hung in the air that made Mira's skin prickle. The lake, before them, stretched into darkness, its surface unnaturally smooth, reflecting the bioluminescent fungi that clung to the ceiling like stars. We'll have to swim, Kale said, already wading into the water. There's a temple outpost on the other side, one of their old prisons where they kept Lana captives. It's abandoned now, but it connects to the surface. Mira hesitated at the water's edge. My equipment will be useless in there anyway. Kale finished for her. The water negates all technology. We'll have to rely on instinct alone. As they swam, Mira felt the weight of the water pressing against her, carrying strange whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Crystal formations jutted from the lake floor, their edges sharp enough to slice through flesh. In the dimness, she could see pale, eyeless fish darting around them, seemingly drawn to their movement. Don't touch the crystals, Kyle warned. They're remnants of Lana experiment stools to amplify natural magic. Halfway across, Mira sensed, rather than heard, pursuers entering the cavern behind them. She turned to see zealots at the shore, their plasma blades casting eerie reflections across the water's surface. Dive! Kyle commanded, pulling her beneath the surface just as energy bolts cut through the water above them. The salt water burned Mira's eyes, but she kept moving, following Kale's shadowy form ahead. The pressure in her ears built as they swam deeper, navigating between crystalline formations that grew more numerous the further they went. One brushed against her arm, sending a jolt of energy through her body that made her gasp, precious air escaping in bubbles toward the surface. Vision swimming, lungs burning. She felt Kale grab her arm, pulling her upward. They broke the surface in a small air pocket beneath an overhanging rock formation, hidden from view. Breathe, he whispered as she gulped air. They can't find us here. Above ground, Eli and Sarah had fought their way to the eastern entrance of the tunnel system, leaving a trail of fallen zealots behind them. They had formed an unlikely alliance, the Earthborn Mercenary and the Lana Sniper united by a common purpose. Kyle's taking her through the old prison complex, Sarah explained as they secured the entrance. It's the only way to bypass the Fellowship's main force. Eli nodded, checking his ammo reserves. How many of your people are here? 20, maybe 25, Sarah replied, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Not enough if they bring their full strength to bear, but enough to get your friend out alive. As she spoke, a plasma bolt struck just inches from her position. Eli yanked her down as more fire rained upon them. A squad of zealots had flanked their position, cutting off their route to the tunnels. "Go!" Sarah shouted, already returning fire. "I'll hold them here. Kyle needs backup inside." Eli hesitated, but another barrage of fire made the decision for him. He sprinted for the tunnel entrance, diving through as Sarah provided covering fire. The last glimpse he had of her was her silhouette, rifle blazing against the crimson sky. He had barely made it 20 meters into the tunnel when he heard her scream. A moment later, silence fell, heavier than any sound could have been. Eli paused, torn between returning to help and pressing forward. But he knew what Sarah had sacrificed for Mira's safety came first. "I'll make it count," he promised silently, activating his night vision as he plunged deeper into the darkness. Meanwhile, Mira and Kale had reached the far shore of the underground lake, climbing onto a stone platform that bore the unmistakable signs of intelligent design. Ancient Lana glyphs covered the walls, their luminescence responding to Mira's presence, growing brighter as she approached. "What is this place?" she whispered, reaching out to touch one of the symbols. It pulsed beneath her fingertips, sending a warm sensation up her arm. "The Heart of Silence," Kale replied, his voice hushed with reverence. "One of the last sanctuaries the Lana built before the first Violara purge. The Fellowship converted it to a prison, but they never understood its true purpose. They moved through chambers that told a story of suffering cells carved into the rock, ancient manacles still attached to the walls, and most disturbing of all, ritual pits where smoke still curled from some unknown source. Mira could almost hear the echoes of those who had died here, their pain etched into the very stone. "The Fellowship used this place to burn Lana witches," Kale explained, his voice tight with controlled rage. "They believed fire would cleanse the impurity from the universe." In the central chamber, a massive altar dominated the space, its surface stained dark with what could only be centuries of blood. Above it hung a mechanism of unknown origin, part machine, part magical artifact that hummed with dormant energy. "The soul transference dais," Kyle said, noting Mira's horrified fascination. "They believed they could extract the Lana essence from half-breeds and offer it to Violara." A noise from an adjoining passageway silenced them both. Zealots had found another entrance to the complex. Kale pulled Mira behind a fallen column, his eyes searching for an escape route. "There's a passage that leads to the Temple of Violara above," he whispered. "It's our only way out now." "You want us to go directly into their headquarters?" Mira hissed in disbelief. Kale's expression was grim. "It's where they'll least expect us, and my people will be creating a diversion at the main entrance. It's our best chance." Far above them, Eli had reached the central tunnel chamber, a massive hub where dozens of passages converged. According to the information Sarah had given him before her sacrifice, this was where the prison's power systems had been housed. If he could disable them, he might give Kale and Mira the cover they needed to escape. The chamber was eerily silent, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency lighting strips that had somehow survived centuries of neglect. Control panels lined the walls, most dark and lifeless, but a few still flickered with activity. Eli approached one, studying the unfamiliar Lana script. He wasn't a technician, but he'd seen enough systems to recognize power distribution when he saw it. Drawing his combat knife, he pried open the panel, exposing a tangle of crystalline conduits that pulsed with energy. "Simple enough," he muttered, selecting a cluster that seemed to be the main feed. "When in doubt, cut everything." As his blade severed the connections, alarms began to wail throughout the complex. Lights flickered and died, plunging the tunnels into darkness broken only by the red glow of emergency backups. Eli smiled grimly in the sudden gloom. "That ought to keep them busy." In the temple high above, chaos erupted as the power failed. The Temple of Violara sat atop an extinct volcano, its highest spires reaching toward the crimson sky that had begun to show signs of volcanic activity, once more a bad omen for those who knew what to look for. Inside, hundreds of zealots had gathered for the Light of Violara ceremony, their chanting now faltering as darkness enveloped the sacred space. At the center of the temple, the ancient soul transference dais had been prepared for a special ritual, its mechanisms humming with anticipation for fresh sacrifice. The high priest of the Violara temple stood before the ancient altar, his face a maze of ritual scars that pulsed with an inner light. When the power failed, he raised his hands, calling for calm. "Fear not, faithful. Violara tests our devotion. Bring forth the torches." Soon, the temple was illuminated by hundreds of flickering flames, casting wild shadows across the walls adorned with depictions of cosmic entities devouring stars. The ceremony would continue, the high priest declared. The purification of the universe waited for no technological failure. What he didn't know was that Kale and Mira had emerged from a hidden passage behind the altar itself, concealed by the very shadows the torches created. They crouched in silence, assessing the situation. "There are too many," Mira whispered, her heart sinking at the sight of the assembled zealots. "We'll never make it through." Kale touched the communicator, hidden in his ear. "We're in position," he murmured. "Commence the diversion." Moments later, explosions rocked the eastern side of the temple. The zealots turned as one, many rushing toward the source of the disturbance. The high priest barked orders, dispatching guards to secure the perimeter while maintaining enough presence to continue the ceremony. "Now," Kale said, pulling Mira toward a side exit that had been left virtually unguarded in the confusion. "My people will keep them occupied while we—" He never finished the sentence. A plasma bolt struck him in the shoulder, sending him sprawling across the stone floor. Mira turned to see a zealot guard emerging from the shadows, weapon raised for a killing shot. Without thinking, she lunged forward, her Lana earring suddenly burning hot against her skin. As her hand connected with the guard's chest, a pulse of blue energy erupted from her palm, throwing him backward with bone-crushing force. Mira stared at her hand in shock, blue energy still crackling between her fingers. She had never manifested Lana abilities before, had never even believed she possessed them. More guards were approaching, drawn by the commotion. Kale struggled to his feet, clutching his wounded shoulder. "Run!" he urged her. "Find Eli. I'll hold them off." "I won't leave you," Mira protested, but Kyle pushed her toward the exit. "You must," he insisted. "You're more important than any of us. Go." Torn, but seeing the determination in his eyes, Mira fled through the side passage. Behind her, she heard Kale engage the guards, buying her precious seconds of escape. The passage led to a narrow staircase that spiraled upward, emerging onto a balcony that overlooked the main temple floor. From her elevated position, Mira could see the full scale of the chaos. The wandering Lana fighters had breached the eastern entrance, engaging the zealots in fierce combat. Plasma bolts and ancient Lana magic cut through the air as the two forces clashed among the temple pillars. And there, fighting his way through the center of the melee, was Eli. His rifle blazed a path through the zealots, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. He was searching for her, she realized, putting himself at risk to reach her. Before she could call out to him, rough hands seized her from behind. "The blasphemer!" hissed a voice filled with religious ecstasy. "The Holy One will be pleased." Mira struggled, but more zealots appeared, overwhelming her. They bound her wrists with energy shackles that burned against her skin, suppressing the strange power that had briefly manifested. They dragged her back through the temple toward the central altar, where the high priest waited with undisguised triumph. "Bring her to the dais," he commanded, raising his arms to call for attention. "Brothers and sisters, Violara has delivered the abomination into our hands. Tonight, we cleanse the universe of another stain." The fighting paused as Mira was forced onto the altar, the zealots gathering to witness the ritual. Even the Lana fighters hesitated, unwilling to risk hitting Mira in the crossfire. Eli, seeing her captured, tried to push forward but found himself surrounded by a ring of plasma blades. He could only watch in helpless rage as the high priest approached Mira, a ceremonial dagger glowing with violet energy in his hand. "Begin the soul exchange chant," the high priest intoned, his voice echoing through the temple. The zealots began to chant in an ancient language that made the very air vibrate with malevolent energy. The mechanism above the altar activated, its components rotating and aligning to focus on Mira's restrained form. Blue energy, her energy, began to leach from her body, drawn upward into the machine. Mira screamed as pain lanced through every fiber of her being. It felt as though her very essence was being torn away, replaced by a cold emptiness that threatened to consume her. Across the temple, Kale had regrouped with the remaining Lana fighters. They formed a defensive circle, their weapons and magic creating a barrier of light that pushed back against the zealots. But they were too far from the altar to reach Mira in time. Eli, seeing an opening as the zealots focused on the ritual, fired a desperate shot at the temple's power distribution node. The blast struck true, plunging the temple into darkness once more. The ritual, chanting, faltered, and the mechanism above Mira stuttered in its extraction. In that moment of confusion, Mira felt the energy shackles weaken. The Lana earring against her skin pulsed once, twice, then shattered the restraints entirely. She rolled off the altar, falling to the ground as the last of the suppression field dissipated. Blood from previous sacrifices soaked into her clothing, coming into contact with the Lana pendant she wore. It began to glow with blue phosphorescence, responding to some dormant magic in her bloodline. The high priest, realizing his prey was escaping, lunged forward with the ceremonial dagger. "You will not deny Vialara," he snarled. Mira raised her hand instinctively, and to her astonishment, a shield of blue energy materialized between them, deflecting the blade. The priest staggered back, momentarily stunned by the display of power. Across the temple, Eli had broken through the line of zealots, his rifle's plasma charge nearly depleted. He fired his remaining shots strategically, clearing a path toward the altar. Kale and his fighters seized the opportunity, surging forward to engage the zealots converging on Mira's position. The high priest recovered quickly, raising his Vialara-emblazoned plasma sword high. "You think yourself a phoenix, half-breed," he sneered, "but you're nothing but a sacrifice." Mira stood, the Lana mark glowing throughout her silver-white hair, and when she spoke, her voice carried a dual tone, her own, overlaid with an ancient echo that evoked memories of the old Lana kingdom. "My mother's spirit sees through you," she declared. Under the integrated power of the awakened Lana magic, Mira's pendant transformed into a stream of cyan light that encircled the priest's plasma sword. The metal screeched as it fractured, engulfing the priest in a halo of energy before exploding in a blinding flash. The high priest was thrown backward, blood streaming from multiple wounds, howling in agony as he collapsed. The temple shuddered, cyan light spreading outward from Mira in concentric waves. The zealots trembled, many dropping their weapons as they witnessed the manifestation of the very power they had sought to eradicate. In the midst of the chaos, the remaining zealots surrounded Mira like a pack of wolves, determined to complete their mission despite the fall of their leader. Her powers, newly awakened and unstable, flickered as exhaustion began to claim her. It was then, in that moment of vulnerability, that she saw Eli fighting his way toward her. Their eyes met across the battlefield, and she couldn't suppress the tremor in her voice as she called out to him. "They've surrounded us. Human," she whispered, trembling, the enormity of their situation crashing down upon her. Eli's face transformed into something primal, a warrior's smile that held no mirth, only deadly promise. "Good," he growled, raising his weapon. "Now I don't even have to aim. A heartbeat of silence fell over the temple, as everyone, Zealot and Lana alike, paused at the audacity of his declaration. Then, with a nod from Mira, Eli's plasma ammunition transformed by her awakened Lana, magic erupted into living fire. Each bullet split into dozens of seeking projectiles that found Zealots with unerring accuracy, regardless of where Eli pointed his weapon. The magic guided his firepower, creating a storm of destruction that swept through the ranks of the Fellowship. Zealots flew in all directions, their robes smoldering, as Mira's power and Eli's weaponry combined into something neither technology nor magic alone could have achieved. Kale and his fighters pressed the advantage, driving back the remaining Zealots with renewed vigor. When the echoes of combat finally faded, an eerie stillness settled over the temple. Only the sound of Mira's heartbeat seemed to fill the space, rhythmic and alive amidst the devastation they had wrought. Mira and Eli stood in the center of the ruined temple, smoke still rising from the bodies of fallen Zealots. The aftermath of battle lay strewn around them: broken weapons, shattered artifacts, and the unmistakable cost of violence. Kale moved among the wounded, both friend and foe, assessing injuries and directing his people to evacuate those who could be saved. Other Lana fighters had begun freeing prisoners from cells beneath the temple, bringing them up into the night air, many blinking in confusion at their unexpected liberation. Some Fellowship members had attempted to flee, but Kale's people had captured them, ensuring they would face justice from the Interstellar Humanitarian Alliance, which had long sought evidence of the Fellowship's crimes against Lana prisoners. Amidst the activity, Mira stood motionless, overwhelmed by the bloodshed and destruction surrounding her. Though they had saved lives, including her own, she couldn't help questioning the path that had brought them here. "Did I do the right thing?" she asked quietly, as Eli approached. "Using Lana power to destroy them? They were once my mother's people. They had families, dreams." Memories washed over her. Her mother, a renowned Lunane scholar, sacrificing herself to protect the Lana tribes from Violara's influence. In that moment, Mira understood that eliminating religious fanaticism didn't mean eradicating everyone with different beliefs. There had to be a better way. "I need to find a way to explain, to reach those Fellowship members who might listen," she decided, "to build bridges instead of burning them." Eli came to stand beside her, gently taking her hand and placing it over his heart so she could feel its steady rhythm. "We won the battle," he said softly. "But keep the light in your heart, not the bloodlust of revenge." Kale approached, pulling a medical patch from the collar of an injured Zealot. "Everything can change if you truly want it to," he said, addressing Mira. "But don't forget, iron rusts from years of rainfall. We need the pure Lana spirit your mother sowed." Mira looked between Kale and Eli, a single tear of both sorrow and hope sliding down her cheek. In the days that followed, the Meridian outpost of the Arcane Fellowship on Arcanus IV became a site of transformation. The Interstellar Humanitarian Alliance oversaw the dismantling of the Temple of Violara, its resources repurposed for a reconciliation center where dialogue between humans and Lana could begin. Mira, Eli, and Kale stood on the temporary military landing pad, watching the distant volcanic range where the red sun painted the sky in shades of carmine. A group of Lana Earth soldiers approached, hands clasped to their chests in the traditional greeting, bowing to Mira with newfound respect. They had decided to organize a ceremony to revive the ancient Lana beliefs, focusing on healing the wounds of war rather than perpetuating cycles of violence. It was a small step, but perhaps a significant one toward lasting peace. Mirana smiled enigmatically, her hand drifting to her chest. Slowly, she removed the Lana earring, revealing a faint scar beneath the mark she and her sister had exchanged when they parted ways. A lifetime ago. Eli placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go home," he said gently. "You've accomplished the hardest part, keeping yourself on the path of peace." Kale stood nearby, his expression one of profound respect. Someday, the Lana flame will spread across the sky, no longer just a streak of blood. At their feet, the transport vessel prepared for takeoff, ready to carry Mira, Eli, and the Lana group back to the metropolis of Caledonia, where politicians were gathering to negotiate a ceasefire. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in years, possibility glimmered on the horizon. Between the red wasteland and peace, the blue flame still flickered. All it took was one spark of hope, strong enough to ignite change. Though the Arcane Fellowship had suffered a temporary defeat, many blinded devotees still lurked throughout Arcanus 4. Mira and Eli were about to embark on a new series of challenges, finding balance between violent instincts and peaceful aspirations for both species. As their ship lifted off, casting a long shadow across the red desert, Mira gazed through the viewport at the landscape below. The planet that had nearly claimed her life now seemed smaller, less threatening, but she knew the real work was just beginning. "What will you do now?" Eli asked, settling into the seat beside her as Kyle piloted the vessel toward the upper atmosphere. "Learn," she replied simply. "About my heritage, about the Lana ways, about how to use this power responsibly." She held up her hand, where a faint blue glow still pulsed beneath her skin. "And then teach others that there's a middle path between fanaticism and abandonment of faith." Eli nodded, understanding in his eyes. He had seen too much violence in his years as a mercenary, had caused too much of it himself. Perhaps Mira's way offered redemption for them both. "And you?" Mira asked, studying his weathered face. "Will you continue with Astra's hope? Return to the border?" Eli was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the stars emerging as they left Arcanus 4's atmosphere. "I think," he said finally, "my place is wherever this struggle takes us next. The Fellowship won't stop with one defeat. They'll regroup, find new converts, continue their crusade. Someone needs to stand against them." "We'll stand together," Kale said from the pilot's seat, his voice carrying easily through the small cabin. "The wandering Lana have fought alone for too long. Perhaps it's time for a true alliance, humans, Lana, and everyone in between." The ship broke free of the planet's gravity well, the red orb of Arcanus 4 falling away beneath them. Ahead lay Caledonia, the political heart of the sector, where their testimony about the Fellowship's atrocities might finally force action from authorities who had long looked the other way. But beyond that immediate mission stretched a far greater challenge: healing centuries of mistrust between species, finding common ground between faith and reason, building a future where Lana and humans could coexist in peace. Mira leaned back in her seat, feeling the weight of that responsibility settling on her shoulders. Her newly awakened powers hummed beneath her skin, no longer painful, but present, a constant reminder of her dual heritage. "One battle at a time," Eli said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "That's all anyone can manage." She smiled at him, grateful for his steady presence. In the chaos of the past days, he had been her anchor, unwavering in his support, despite his own initial skepticism about Lana magic. People could change, she realized. Even the most deeply held beliefs could evolve when confronted with new truths. Perhaps that was the real key to peace, not grand diplomacy or decisive battles, but the small, personal transformations that rippled outward, changing hearts and minds one at a time. As Caledonia appeared on the view screen, a gleaming metropolis against the backdrop of space, Mira straightened her shoulders. Whatever came next, she would face it with both sides of her heritage in harmony, the human rationality of her father and the Lana intuition of her mother, no longer at war within her, but working in concert. "We're being hailed," Kale announced, his fingers dancing across the communications panel. "Caledonian security wants identification." "Tell them," Mira said, her voice steady with newfound purpose. That we bring news from Arcanis Fa. Tell them the Fellowship's reign of terror is ending, and a new chapter is beginning. Eli reached across the space between them, his calloused hand finding hers. In his touch was understanding, respect, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. They had survived the impossible together, and that bond would not easily break. As the ship began its descent toward Caledonia's main spaceport, Mira gazed at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, her mother's spirit watched over her. Somewhere. The ancient Lana ancestors who had first resisted Violara's corruption were waiting to see if their descendants would finally find peace. "I won't let you down," she whispered to the cosmos. "Not any of you." The blue glow of her Lana power flared briefly in response, as if the universe itself had heard her promise. In the weeks that followed their arrival on Caledonia, the political landscape shifted dramatically. Evidence of the Fellowship's atrocities, presented by Mira and corroborated by former prisoners, sparked outrage across the Nine-Realm universe. Sanctions were imposed on Fellowship-controlled territories, and peacekeeping forces were dispatched to protect vulnerable Lana communities. But peace remained fragile. The Fellowship, though wounded, retained significant influence in the outer sectors. Reports of their forces regrouping, adopting new tactics, continued to reach Caledonia. The war for the soul of the universe had not ended. It had merely entered a new phase. Mira found herself thrust into the role of diplomat, traveling between human and Lana settlements to build coalitions against the Fellowship's extremism. Her unique heritage made her the perfect bridge between worlds that had long viewed each other with suspicion. Eli remained by her side, his tactical expertise complementing her diplomatic skills. Together, they navigated the treacherous waters of interspecies politics, always watchful for Fellowship assassins who sought to silence Mira before her message of unity could spread. Kale, meanwhile, had taken on the task of reforming the wandering Lana community, transforming it from a scattered resistance into an organized force for positive change. Under his leadership, they established schools where young Lana could learn both their ancestral traditions and modern sciences, breaking down the false dichotomy the Fellowship had created between faith and knowledge. On a crisp morning, 6 months after the Battle of Violara Temple, Mira stood on the balcony of the Caledonian Reconciliation Center, watching the sunrise paint the city in gold. Eli joined her, 2 steaming cups of café in his hands. "The Thorasian delegation arrived last night," he said, offering her one of the cups. "That makes 17 species now supporting the anti-extremism accord." Mira accepted the drink gratefully, the warmth seeping through her fingers. "And the Furlance representatives? Any word?" "Still deliberating," Eli replied. "Their history with the Lana goes back millennia. Old wounds heal slowly." She nodded, understanding all too well how difficult it was to overcome centuries of mistrust. "At least they're talking now. That's more than we had a year ago." They stood in companionable silence, watching the city come to life below them. Caledonia had changed in the months since their arrival, becoming a hub for interspecies cooperation, where once different species had kept to their own districts. Now the boundaries were blurring, cultural exchange flourishing in the wake of the common threat the Fellowship represented. "Kale's ship is due to dock this afternoon," Eli said after a while. "He's bringing something he says you need to see. Wouldn't tell me what it is, just that it's important." Mira's curiosity was piqued. Kale had been exploring ancient Lana sites across the sector, searching for knowledge that had been suppressed by the Fellowship. Each discovery helped Mira better understand her own awakening powers, which continued to manifest in unexpected ways. "Whatever it is, I'm sure it will complicate our lives," she said with a wry smile. "Things have been almost peaceful lately. We're overdue for a crisis." Eli chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. He had changed too, she realized. The hard edges of the mercenary were softening, revealing the man beneath the armor. "You almost sound like you miss the excitement." "Never," she said firmly, though they both knew there was some truth to his words. The quiet moments between crises were precious, but they had both been forged in fire. Sometimes peace felt almost like stagnation. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an aide, breathless with urgency. "Mirana Thorne, there's an emergency communication for you from the outer sectors. It's coded Priority 1. Mira and Eli exchanged glances. The moment of tranquility shattered. "Put it through to my quarters," she instructed, already moving toward the door. In her private communication suite, a holographic display flickered to life, revealing the worried face of one of their contacts in the Relian system. "Mira, thank the stars. We've intercepted Fellowship communications. They're planning something big, a coordinated attack on multiple Lana settlements, scheduled for the Festival of Renewal. The Festival of Renewal, an ancient Lana celebration, marking the spring equinox, when their connection to natural magic was strongest. It would be the perfect time to strike, when many Lana would be gathered together, their guards lowered in celebration." "How reliable is this intelligence?" Eli asked, his military training immediately asserting itself. "Very," the contact replied grimly. "We have confirmation from 3 independent sources, including a defector from the Fellowship's inner circle. They're calling it the final purification." Mira felt ice form in her veins. "When?" 3 standard weeks from now. They've been stockpiling weapons, recruiting zealots from across the sector. This isn't a skirmish, Mira. It's an attempted genocide." As the implications sank in, Mira's Lana power flared involuntarily, blue light dancing across her skin in response to her emotions. She took a deep breath, forcing the energy back under control. "Send us everything you have," she instructed. "Locations, troop movements, supply chains. We need to warn the Interstellar Humanitarian Alliance immediately." After the communication ended, Mira turned to Eli, determination hardening her features. "We need to move up the timeline for the Defense Coalition. There's no time for political maneuvering now." Eli nodded, already calculating logistics in his head. "I'll contact our allies. Get emergency response teams mobilized. Kale needs to be warned. The wandering Lana will be primary targets." As they sprang into action, coordinating the response to this new threat, Mira felt a strange sense of inevitability. Perhaps this confrontation had always been coming, final reckoning between extremism and coexistence, between fear and hope. The battle that had begun in the Temple of Violara was about to reach its true climax, played out across a dozen worlds, and once again, Mira found herself at the center of the storm, her dual heritage making her both target and savior. But this time, she was not alone. Humans, Lana, and a growing coalition of species stood with her, united against the darkness the Fellowship represented. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As she prepared for the struggle ahead, Mira remembered the words Kale had spoken on Arcanis 4, standing amidst the ruins of the temple. Someday, the Lana flame will spread across the sky, no longer just a streak of blood. Perhaps that day was coming sooner than any of them had dared to hope. The red wastes of Arcanis 4 had been just the beginning, a testing ground for the alliance that now spanned the stars. The blue flame of hope that had flickered so tentatively in the aftermath of battle now burned steadily, a beacon in the darkness of space. All it had taken was one spark strong enough to ignite change. That spark had been Mira, neither fully human nor fully Lana, but something new and powerful, a bridge between worlds that had too long been divided. As the sun rose higher over Caledonia, Mira squared her shoulders and prepared to face the greatest challenge yet. The Fellowship believed they were fighting to preserve purity, to maintain ancient boundaries. What they failed to understand was that the universe had never been pure, It had always been a tapestry of interconnected life, stronger for its diversity. That was the truth Mira carried within her, written in her very blood. And it was the truth she would fight to protect, no matter the cost. "Ready?" Eli asked, standing by the door, his expression a mirror of her own determination. Mira nodded. The Lana power within her a steady pulse now. No longer frightening, but familiar. A tool, not a burden. A gift from her mother's people that she would use to protect, not destroy. "Ready," she confirmed. "Let's show the Fellowship what happens when the universe stands as one." Together, they stepped out into the light of a new day, prepared to write the next chapter in the eternal struggle between division and unity, between hatred and love. The blue flame of the Lana still flickered against the red sky of conflict, but it burned stronger with each passing moment, fed by the courage of those who dared to hope for something better. And in that hope lay the true power to change the universe, one heart at a time,